So as I've said before, man, there has been many different things that I've had to endure online, and I'm glad different people have been able to see different things, mer- you know, regardless of their perspective. Everybody, you know, they has their they have their way of seeing things and viewing things, and so the only thing that matters is what God says, um, and so I had to be confident in that. I'm like, just seeing so many different um, things said wrong about me now. Granted, there's been some things that I've been rightly corrected on in the past, um, even recently at times, but seeing certain things, you know, the way people misrepresent information and different things. Um, I could say about 6 months ago, it was just a little bit of troubling, you know, because it's almost like I've been framed to look like a certain individual since the beginning of my time online. And as I've said, man, there's been different groups of people every single time to where it'll cause, you know, me to have to speak out and defend myself. And as I've said, different people don't see all these different angles. Like they may see one angle, they may see a couple different angles, but to see a whole bunch of different things at one time, and I'm not acting like you know I'm some all-knowing or whatever. I'm highly aware of different things, and I'm inquisitive, and at times I figure out things and I see things without even having to know it. Like I could see something and see how it's going to play out. Um, and so just paying attention to many different things has, caused anxiety in the past. But as I've said, yesterday, you know, trying to maintain a focus on what's important, what's directly in front of you, because one thing the enemy like to do is distract you with something uh, that isn't happening or that isn't going to happen. How many people have had, tormenting thoughts about bad things happening to their loved ones or people that they care about? Um, Even random people, like you may hear something evil whispered about somebody, and it's like, nah, like, good thing I'm aware now to come out of agreement with those things. Anytime I hear something evil, um, you want to come out of agreement with those thoughts, and you want to rebuke it. Um, a lot of different times when I was younger, I would just look at it as, just something random. Um, but as I've grown and become more mature, I realize, some of those things are, demonic. So whenever you're hearing things outside, it seems outside of yourself, and especially if it's speaking negatively against other people, against you, talking about negatively about you in any type of way, um, don't just let those things um, fly. Like, just don't let those things go across the screen in your mind without doing something about it. That's something that I'm glad I've become more aware of. And so, with all that being said, with all my experiences, I've learned, not to come into agreement with every single thing. Um, at times, different things have been confusing for me. And so, the only solid thing that we have is God's word. And so, whenever I feel confused about anything, maybe things that I'm seeing in the world, things that I'm hearing from different people, my, instant thing to that is to, at times pray about it, be like, what does this mean? But um, I can also say going to the Bible, reading it, especially if you got an idea of where to go, or if you have like a similar representation of something that they're saying in mind, like a precept or anything. Um, it starts making a lot of wisdom. But, I've learned to try to focus on those things instead of, you know, like I said, coming to agreement with different things that everybody is saying, just noticing the motives behind different things that people are saying at times. And, you know, um, we just got to be careful. I feel like a lot of people are out here to damage the image of other people, and it could be unknowingly. Um, and that's one of the reasons why I say minding your business is, an important thing. It wasn't me directing anything at anybody. And so, another thing I don't like is saying something and then somebody else tries to interpret it, or, um, will be, or get on top of it, be like, well, this is the meaning, or, say something similar to where it's like people can get confused about what I may mean about it. And, that has made me very irritable. But more recently, I've been getting better with that because I've been at more peace. I know what to look at, and even different things that people think I may be entertaining, um, I don't. Sometimes, I'm not gonna keep explaining myself to different people, but sometimes, you know, I just look at things and I'm in support of the people that, I've been a supporter of for years. And I believe part of my test was focusing on myself at times and not being critical on what I may be seeing, and even what's coming at me, and also being able to differentiate what is malicious and what's not coming at me. Because as a man, guys poke fun with other guys all the time. But when you notice certain people doing certain things, and it's consistent and it seems demeaning, those are things that I pay attention to. Like, some people may say I have a problem with authority. I don't. Just getting older, having your own mind, maybe having a way that your own particular way that you do things. And that's not to say I dismiss wisdom. For instance, my uncle I work with, he's 76, and I already have experience painting, but I was going to listen to what he said either way. But what he was telling me in that moment was clearly, wrong, or it wasn't something that was necessarily convenient. And I felt like he might have been only saying it because, he wanted me to do it a particular way. And so, um, what I do is I sit there and I listen to him. I don't tell him I'm not going to do it that way. What I do is listen, and I try to do what he's telling me to do, but I also stay within what I know how to do, because it works better for me. One of those things being, if I'm painting, I do like to put up the blue tape. He say, if you really know how to paint, you don't have to do that. I agree. But everybody doesn't have that type of touch. And in order to make the lines right, the tape makes everything looks better. It pops out. And so, you can have a certain way that you like to do things, and you can disagree with how somebody else do it, but, at times you can be overstepping because, that's a process that helps them get the best result that they need. And, like I said, I took the advice that he was saying, nodded, you applied some of it, but also stuck to what I was doing. And that helps me more than anything, being able to draw a little bit of what people are saying and apply it to myself. And it helps give me a greater understanding instead of taking somebody else's entire understanding as my own understanding. And that's something I could never do. Like I said, as a person that likes to think for themselves and, come up with their own ideas and different things like that, it's very hard for me to have a hive mind and a crowd mentality with things. And so I encourage people to do the same. Peace.